Hey guys, tonight we drift back several thousand years to a land of sun-baked stone and murmuring pines, where the world moves slowly and even empires seem to breathe. You're standing on a plateau in what's now central Turkey, where the air carries a faint, dry sweetness and cicadas whisper like a soft metronome. This is Hattusa, the capital of the Hittite Empire. Not the battle-scarred version you read about in textbooks, the one forever fighting Egypt or marching into Syria, but the calm years in between, when peace settled like warm dust on every roof tile.
You probably won't survive this, of course. Bronze Age air quality and questionable water supply and all, but don't worry, you're just visiting in spirit. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me in the comments, where are you listening from and what time is it there? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You open your eyes to the golden calm of Hattusa around the 13th century BCE. The morning is cool, the kind that will soon ripen into gentle heat. The city lies sprawled across terraces of pale limestone, with walls curling around the hills like a dragon too tired to wake. Below you, roofs of baked mud bricks shimmer faintly. Smoke rises from small hearths, carrying the scent of barley porridge and sheep fat. For an empire that once spilled blood to exist, this is a moment of astonishing quiet. The Hittite Empire, at this point, is settled. It stretches from the Aegean coast to the edges of Mesopotamia, ruled not by fear, but by bureaucracy, the most soothing of all powers. Tablets have replaced swords. Officials spend their mornings arguing about grain quotas instead of glory. Somewhere, a guard yawns. It's that kind of day. As you walk down the hill toward the city's center, you feel the hush of stone under your sandals. The limestone steps are worn smooth by generations of sandals just like yours. Pigeons flutter from the gates, massive ones, carved with lions whose faces have eroded into faint smiles. Once, these gates saw soldiers return from conquest, but now they greet traders with donkeys and baskets of figs. A group of workers hauls clay jars toward the temple quarter. They move slowly, not from laziness, but because they can. The empire is at peace. There's no deadline more pressing than sunset. It's easy to forget that this was once one of the great powers of the ancient world, rival to Egypt, Babylon, and Assyria. But even mighty nations have their sleepy seasons. The historians who sift through the ruins call this the late imperial period, when kings like Hattusili III and his successor, Tudhaliya IV, traded ambition for administration. They were more interested in building granaries than armies. Some scholars argue it was wisdom, others complacency. Historians still argue whether this calm was foresight or simply fatigue wearing a crown. You pause by a well. Its stones are slick, cold even under the sun. A boy is drawing water, humming what might be the world's oldest pop song, a melody about sheep and the moon, probably. You nod to him, and he grins, offering you a drink in a chipped clay cup. The water tastes faintly of minerals and earth, grounding, like the city itself. Above, the royal citadel gleams, walls plastered smooth and painted ochre. From up there, the king oversees his peaceful domain. The palace scribes are already at their desks, scratching symbols into tablets with reed styluses, documenting, well, everything. Taxes, inventories, even dreams if someone of rank had a particularly interesting one. You'll meet those scribes properly later, but for now, their rhythmic scratching is the city's soft heartbeat. Down here, the markets are waking. A potter arranges her bowls with an obsessive neatness that suggests she has all the time in the world. A merchant unwraps bolts of linen imported from Egypt, their pale threads catching the light like silk rivers. Another trader offers incense from the Levant, promising it can soothe headaches or impress dinner guests.
No one's in a rush to buy. The peace has made everyone patient. A priest in white linen passes, murmuring a hymn to the storm god Teshub. You'd expect a storm god to be dramatic, but here he's more of a gentle weather manager. His worshippers light tiny oil lamps rather than bonfires. The temple bells chime softly, almost apologetically. You notice something else. No one seems tense. Even the guards lounging by the gate look more like unpaid extras in a peaceful dream than soldiers. Their spears are polished, yes, but mostly decorative. One of them uses his shield as a seat while carving something in wood, maybe a dice set. He waves when you look. The Empire's peace extends even to strangers. It's easy to romanticize this stillness, but not everyone loved it. A few old generals grumbled that peace dulled the edge of honor. One clay tablet preserves a rant from a retired officer complaining that young men grow soft while the barley grows tall. You can almost hear the ancient equivalent of "back in my day." Yet, the majority seemed content. Fields were yielding, trade routes humming, and the gods, at least according to the priests, were in a good mood. The bureaucrats might not have been poets, but they were consistent. The peace of the Hittite Empire wasn't glamorous. It was paperwork and patience, enforced by tradition and the mild terror of disappointing your supervisor. As you move toward the northern gate, a breeze stirs the dust into soft spirals. You stop to admire the distant ridges. Beyond them lies a network of roads leading to smaller cities, Alakahayuk, Sapinua, Carchemish, each with its own temples and markets. Couriers ride along those paths every few days, delivering sealed tablets and news, like very slow text messages. Sometimes they carry gossip about the Egyptian court or a shipment of copper ingots bound for Ugarit. The world, you realize, is linked by peace more than war. You pass a row of small houses built against the outer wall. A woman stands at her doorway, grinding grain on a flat stone. Her hands move with a hypnotic rhythm. She smiles politely, offering you a crust of bread that smells faintly of honey and smoke. You take a bite. It's coarse but satisfying. You thank her in halting Hittite, which sounds a bit like someone humming through a mouthful of porridge. She laughs anyway. There's something deeply human about this place. Ordinary lives stitched together by routine. It's easy to imagine nights here. Soft torchlight, stories traded over cups of beer brewed from emmer wheat, the low hum of flutes drifting between houses. You can almost hear it. One curious fact about the Hittites, mainstream historians agree they were masters of diplomacy. Their treaties were detailed, sometimes poetic, and carved into stone so that even gods could, theoretically, read them. A quirky tidbit? They were also apparently fond of oaths that involved pouring water over one's hands while swearing to behave, sort of like washing your sins off before you even commit them. There's something strangely modern about that gesture, like ancient HR compliance training. You smile at the thought as you continue walking, past goats nibbling at the scrub and children chasing each other with sticks that will, inevitably, be declared swords by bedtime. By midday, the city glows. The limestone blazes white, and the air hums with insects. You find a bit of shade near a carved stone lion, the same one travelers will one day see in museums, dusty and dignified. Its teeth are worn smooth, its eyes softened by centuries of wind. You rest your back against it, closing your eyes for a moment. The breeze smells faintly of pine resin and distant rain. In the silence, you can almost hear the Empire breathing, a great living thing, content for now, unaware that the stillness will one day be shattered. But that's far in the future. For now, the golden calm holds. You let your thoughts drift, imagining the rhythm of this city. Sunrise prayers, mid-morning markets, quiet lunches, evenings filled with slow laughter. A civilization not frozen in fear or frenzy, but resting, for once, in balance. And as the sun begins its slow arc toward the western hills, you rise again, ready to wander deeper into this tranquil heart of history, toward the streets, the people, and the small miracles that keep peace alive. You step down from the Lion Gate into the winding arteries of Hattusa, where the city hums with life that is gentle, measured, and unhurried. The streets, paved in broad limestone slabs, gleam under the mid-morning sun, and your sandals scuff softly as you walk. The stone feels warm already, as if it remembers every sunrise that has ever brushed these walls. The air smells faintly of dust and bread, the kind of comforting aroma that signals both stability and carbohydrate dependence. Around you, voices murmur, not shouting or bargaining, just the steady hum of people talking about grain rations, neighbors, and which goat chewed whose laundry this time. This is the pulse of a capital at peace. The empire's borders are quiet, the soldiers are home, and the people have turned their energy inward, to build, to trade, to gossip. You pass a scribe's apprentice crouched in the shade, balancing a wet clay tablet on his knees. He's muttering syllables under his breath as he copies out a contract, a farmer selling a cow to a brewer. You glance at the lines, tiny wedges and triangles pressed with careful precision. Somewhere in those scratches lies a legal promise, a transaction sealed not by blood, but by bureaucracy. Mainstream historians tell us the Hittites were pioneers in keeping organized written records. Their archives, tens of thousands of tablets, capture the rhythms of ordinary life more clearly than almost any other Bronze Age civilization. It's thanks to them that we know what kind of beer they brewed, which taxes annoyed them most, and even which merchants were habitually late with deliveries. A quirky tidbit, one surviving letter from Hattusa complains about a shipment of wool that arrived damp. The writer, politely but firmly, informs the supplier that wet wool invites mice and gods alike. You can almost hear the irritation through the clay. You walk further into the city's heart, and the soundscape unfolds. Wooden wheels creaking, donkeys braying lazily, children giggling somewhere behind a stone wall. The walls themselves rise high on either side of the street, painted in faded reds and yellows. Some show chipped murals, chariots, bulls, winged deities, scenes of triumph from another age. Once these paintings celebrated conquest, now they're just decoration, memories of glory turned into background art for peaceful living. You stop near a small square where merchants have laid out their goods. A man sells baskets woven from reeds, their colors dyed with plant pigments, ochre, indigo, and soft green. Next to him, a woman arranges carved ivory combs that glint in the sunlight. She catches your eye and lifts one for you to see, saying something about the fine craftsmanship from the city of Carchemish. You admire it, though you know full well your modern hairbrush at home would probably terrify her. Across the square, a potter spins her wheel, shaping wet clay into bowls and jars. Her hands move in a rhythm so slow and steady that you could fall asleep watching her. The clay hisses softly as she smooths its surface with water. She looks up briefly, her face streaked with sunlight through a reed canopy, and smiles before returning to her work. The city's population, perhaps 10,000 souls during these peaceful years, feels smaller than it sounds. Everyone seems to know someone who knows someone else. You overhear fragments of conversation as you pass. A man debating whether the barley harvest will come early. Two older women wondering if the priest's new chant is too long. A young couple laughing about a goat that refuses to leave their courtyard. It's domestic life in all its ancient, ordinary perfection. The city's architecture reflects its mood. The buildings are practical, square, and pleasingly symmetrical. The walls are mud brick over stone foundations, whitewashed to reflect the sun. Wooden beams jut from the roofs like ribs, drying herbs hang from windows, and courtyards bloom with fig trees and grapevines. Every corner seems to hum with the small comforts of routine. As you walk, You pass a group of workers repairing a water channel. One man whistles off-key as he stacks limestone blocks. Another leans on his shovel, watching ants march along a crack in the pavement. No one's in a hurry. After all, the river will still be there tomorrow. There's something almost meditative about it all. The predictability, the shared slowness, even the animals seem relaxed. A dog dozes under a cart, tail twitching in some prehistoric dream about leftover stew bones. Chickens wander freely, clucking to themselves like gossipy old neighbors. Up ahead, the main avenue opens into a larger plaza where the air grows warmer and the chatter thickens. This is the commercial center of Hattusa, the place where farmers bring surplus grain, where artisans barter for copper, and where the occasional foreign trader might appear with marvels from beyond the empire's borders, Egyptian glass beads, Cretan oil jars, or tin from the distant east. You pause near a stall selling honey cakes shaped like flowers. The vendor offers you one, insisting it's blessed by the goddess of hearth and sweetness, a title she may have invented on the spot. The cake is sticky, fragrant with herbs, and probably older than modern dental hygiene can handle. You take a careful bite anyway. Historians still argue whether the Hittite sense of order was purely administrative or deeply spiritual. Was their calm born of faith or fatigue? Did they genuinely believe that rituals kept chaos at bay, or was it simply convenient to act like they did? The clay tablets don't quite tell us, and maybe that's the charm. So much left to imagine between the lines. As the sun climbs higher, the light sharpens. The city begins to shimmer, and you slip into the shade of an archway. Inside, a small workshop hums with quiet activity. A pair of apprentices chip at blocks of basalt, carving low-relief scenes of kings and gods. The older craftsman overseeing them glances your way and nods. His hands are dusted with stone powder. Every stroke he makes adds another calm smile or raised arm to a scene that's been carved 1,000 times before. The repetition is comforting, like prayer in motion. You ask, softly, what he's making? He tells you it's a gift for the temple, a depiction of the storm god standing beside the sun goddess. They bring balance, he says, so long as people remember to thank them. His words drift into the stone dust, and you wonder how many times that phrase has been said in this city, in slightly different voices. Further along, you encounter a priestess leading a small procession. 3 girls carrying baskets of flowers, their bare feet padding softly on the stones. They pass by with serene expressions, scattering petals toward the temple. You follow their path from a distance, watching as the petals flutter like tiny pink sighs in the wind. There's a curious kind of sacredness here, not loud or dramatic, but woven through daily life. Every corner has its quiet ritual. The baker crossing her fingers before kneading dough, the mason whispering to his tools, the mother touching the lintel of her doorway before stepping inside. A sudden gust of wind sweeps through the street, tugging your cloak and swirling dust around your feet. For a moment, the air smells of rain on hot stone. Then it passes, leaving the city as it was, calm, slow, endlessly ordinary. You stop near a fountain where water spills gently from a carved lion's mouth. A boy splashes his hands in it, laughing, while his father watches with a fond smile. You think about how many small moments like this have played out in this same spot over centuries. Different faces, same laughter. If you could lift your gaze high above the city, you'd see Hattusa as a mosaic of life. Homes, markets, temples, gardens, and the occasional stray chicken. The walls encircle it like protective arms. Beyond them, the fields stretch golden and still, dotted with small farms. Somewhere, bells chime from the temple district, marking the hour, not to command, but simply to remind everyone that time is still passing gently. You find a bench, Well, a convenient slab of stone, and sit for a moment, letting the hum of the city wash over you. Every sound seems to blend into a single peaceful tone, like a deep exhale. And there, in that sound, lies the real wonder of the Hittite peace. Not the treaties, not the grand architecture, but this collective quiet confidence that life, for once, is steady. No war horns, no famine alarms, just the contented murmuring of a people who, for a generation or two, believed the world could stay this calm forever. You rise again, brushing the dust from your hands, ready to follow that hum toward the citadel, toward the palace where a king wakes to the same sun, unhurried and serene. Morning in the royal citadel feels different. The air is thinner, cooler, as if it's filtered through centuries of ceremony before reaching your lungs. You make your way up the steep stone path, where the city's chatter fades to a low murmur behind you. Here, above the rooftops and markets, the palace sits in measured silence, its long walls plastered smooth and pale against the sky. A pair of guards watch you pass. Their bronze helmets glint dully, more decorative than defensive. One adjusts his strap and yawns so wide it creaks. He's clearly not expecting trouble today, or any day soon. The peace has softened everyone's edges, even those whose job once depended on sharpness. You cross through a gate carved with scenes of the gods blessing the king. The figures are worn but dignified, the stone faces serene. There's no aggression in them, just the calm assertion that the world is in order, the gods content, and the bureaucracy, presumably, up to date. The courtyard beyond smells faintly of cedar and barley porridge. Pigeons coo from the roof beams. Servants move quietly across the flagstones, their sandals whispering like brushstrokes. Somewhere, someone is sweeping. Someone else is tuning a lyre, its thin notes curling through the air like smoke. At the heart of it all stands the royal residence, less a palace of opulence, more a grand administrative home. Thick stone walls, wide corridors, courtyards blooming with fig trees. This is the house of the king, the living center of the Hittite world. And inside, your day begins with his. The king's morning starts early, not out of anxiety, but habit. You find him in his private courtyard, wrapped in a linen robe, seated near a small basin of water. A servant pours gently over his hands, while another reads a brief morning prayer to the sun goddess of Irina. The words are soft, melodic, repeated so often they've probably lost their edge and become something like ancient white noise. You watch the king, middle-aged, calm-eyed, his beard carefully trimmed. This is Tudhalia IV, one of the later rulers of the empire, remembered not for conquest, but for his steady hand. He prefers scrolls to swords, treaties to trophies. The Hittites once called their kings "my son," but Tudhalia seems more like a lamp, steady, warm, illuminating without glare. Breakfast is simple. Honeyed bread, figs, a little goat cheese and watered wine. Nothing excessive, just enough to fuel a morning of divine paperwork. A scribe stands nearby, reading aloud the day's agenda in a tone that sounds like every government meeting you've ever escaped. The king nods occasionally, perhaps pretending to listen, perhaps genuinely interested in the grain yields from Tarhuntasa. It's hard to tell. The Hittite kings ruled not as absolute monarchs, but as first among many officials. They presided over a council called the Panku, a collection of nobles and administrators who shared in decision-making. In other words, Bronze Age committee meetings were already a thing. Historians still argue whether this balance of power was wisdom or necessity, but either way, it kept things civil. A servant approaches with a tray of sealed clay tablets, today's messages from other cities. Tudhalia inspects one briefly. It's a letter from the Viceroy of Carchemish, full of polite flattery and thinly veiled requests for more silver. Another tablet bears a complaint from a priest about temple repairs running behind schedule. Bureaucracy, it seems, is the true immortal. You follow as the king moves through the palace halls, his sandals making the faintest slap against polished stone. Sunlight filters through narrow windows, scattering onto murals of lions, bulls, and double-headed eagles. The palace hums quietly, clerks dictating, scribes scratching, couriers padding in with fresh tablets still soft and warm. He pauses to greet one of the high priests, a man with a shaved head and the calm smile of someone who hasn't been outdoors in a decade. They exchange ritual phrases about harmony and divine favor. You catch only fragments. The gods are balanced today, the priest says, as if discussing the weather. There's a peculiar serenity to it all. The king's authority feels less like domination and more like orchestration, keeping everyone in rhythm. Even when he issues commands, they sound like gentle suggestions. Still, not all is perfect harmony. A messenger arrives breathless from a border town, dusty and nervous. He kneels, presenting a tablet marked with the seal of a local governor. The report concerns a minor dispute over grazing lands between two villages. It's the sort of issue that could escalate if ignored. Tudhalia listens patiently, then instructs his steward to send a mediator. Problem handled. No shouting, no sword drawing, just calm administrative power in action. The quirky tidbit here, the Hittite kings often issued decrees about animal welfare, specifically oxen. One surviving law states that if a plow ox falls ill, the owner must let it rest as the gods let men rest on feast days. Imagine that! The world's earliest PTO policy for cows. Later in the morning, the royal household stirs into fuller motion. Musicians rehearse in a corner of the courtyard, flutes, drums, a harp. A pair of children, the king's nephews perhaps, chase each other around a column, laughing until a nurse shoos them away. You find yourself smiling. For all its formality, the palace feels lived in, human, even cozy. As you wander deeper inside, you reach the council chamber. Here, the air thickens slightly, not with tension, but with expectation. Around a long wooden table sit the empire's administrators, generals, priests, record keepers. Their robes rustle as they shift. Each man holds a clay tablet, ready to read, argue, or nod sagely in agreement. The meeting begins with the recitation of omens, standard procedure, just in case the gods feel like joining the conference call. The priest declares the signs favorable, though you suspect they always are. Then come the reports: grain distribution, tribute collection, temple upkeep. You can't help but notice how soothingly repetitive it all is. The rhythm of governance, the empire breathing in data, exhaling orders. One advisor clears his throat and proposes a minor revision to tax codes in the southern provinces. Another suggests the construction of a new canal near Hattusa to improve irrigation. Tudhalia listens, asks brief questions, then gestures approval. His voice is calm, deliberate. If this were a modern office, he'd be the boss who always speaks softly but somehow gets everyone to listen. The meeting lasts for hours, but no one seems restless. The peace has made patience a civic virtue. When it ends, the king steps outside again. The light has shifted, warmer now, golden. A servant offers him water in a bronze cup. He drinks, sighs, and for a moment looks not like a ruler, but simply a man enjoying a rare kind of stability. You follow him into the royal gardens, a small oasis behind the palace walls. Olive trees twist in the breeze, their silver leaves catching the sun. The scent of thyme drifts from the flower beds. Bees hum lazily among the blossoms. You sit on a low stone bench, watching as the king walks among the trees with his chief scribe, discussing something in low tones. Perhaps a temple repair, or maybe just the weather. The gardens are a world apart. Birds chattering, a fountain bubbling quietly. Somewhere nearby, a turtle slides into a shallow pool with a sound like a dropped pebble. You feel time, slowing, stretching. The peace here feels almost tangible, like a warm blanket thrown across the shoulders of the empire. But even in such serenity, you can sense the faint pulse of history. Tiny choices, quiet policies, small decrees that will ripple outward for generations. Empires don't just collapse through storms. Sometimes they drift gently, lulled by their own contentment. Historians still argue whether Tutalia's calm reign preserved the empire or numbed it. Was peace the prize or the prelude? You lean back, closing your eyes. The air hums with bees and distant music from the courtyard. Somewhere, a scribe reads aloud the day's final report, his voice blending into the sound of leaves rustling. The king lifts his gaze toward the horizon. For now, all is steady. The treaties hold, the gods are content. The streets below are filled with laughter and commerce. The golden years stretch on, serene and drowsy. And you, standing beside him in the sun, feel that same deep exhale, a rare kind of historical stillness. The empire rests. The king smiles faintly, and somewhere in the shadow of those quiet walls, the next chapter of peace begins to unfold. The sound of soft scraping greets you before the light does, a gentle, rhythmic whisper of reed on clay. You follow it through a narrow stone corridor, cool and dim, where the smell of wet earth and lamp oil mingles with something faintly sweet, like beeswax. The passage opens into a wide chamber filled with rows of low wooden tables. Scribes are already at work. They sit cross-legged or hunched, elbows resting on their knees, each with a clay tablet in front of them. Some are fresh and damp, others already baked and stacked neatly in baskets. The air hums with concentration, the kind of silence that's not empty, but full of tiny sounds. The click of styluses, the occasional sneeze, the scratch of someone shifting on a cushion. You've stepped into the brain of the empire. A senior scribe looks up from his work, eyes rimmed with fatigue and a little pride. He greets you politely, gestures for you to sit near a low shelf stacked with tablets. Each one is a thought preserved in clay. Letters, laws, inventories, even poems. You can practically feel the weight of the words pressing down on history itself. One mainstream historical fact: the Hittites built one of the most sophisticated bureaucratic archives of the Bronze Age. Over 30,000 tablets have been unearthed from this very city. Records of treaties, trials, weather reports, and personal notes. Scholars still study them today, marveling at how much paperwork it took to keep peace alive. You watch as a young apprentice dips his reed stylus into a bowl of water before resuming his careful carving. He's copying a hymn to the storm god Teshub line by line. Each wedge-shaped mark has to be precise. A single slip can change a word's meaning, or worse, make a prayer grammatically awkward. And nobody wants to be responsible for a divine typo. You lean closer and notice how the light from oil lamps glows softly across the clay. The marks shimmer like tiny rivers of shadow. There's something almost hypnotic about it, the steady repetition, the patience. The head scribe chuckles when he sees your fascination. "It looks dull," he says, "but dullness keeps the world from breaking." You smile because he's right. Empires don't survive on glory alone. They survive on paperwork, the eternal art of not forgetting. He sets down his stylus and picks up a finished tablet, reading it aloud in the rolling rhythm of the Hittite tongue. It's a grain inventory for the northern provinces, complete with calculations, locations, and, surprisingly, a doodle of a donkey scratched in the corner. A touch of humanity amid the bureaucracy. A quirky tidbit: archaeologists once found a tablet where a scribe had accidentally pressed his own fingerprint into the wet clay beside a royal decree. Thousands of years later, we can still see it. It's oddly moving, proof that even the keepers of empires left smudges when they worked too late. You glance at the rows of shelves around the chamber. They're packed with tablets in neat stacks, their edges marked with small impressions that serve as labels. Some contain entire libraries of myth, epics about gods wrestling in the sky, ancient heroes slaying monsters, or farmers learning which days to plant wheat. Others hold legal debates, instructions for royal cooks, or translations of Babylonian proverbs. One scribe, his hair tied back with a strip of linen, looks up and says, "We keep copies of everything, just in case the gods lose theirs." You laugh quietly, unsure whether he's joking or serious. Around here, it's often both. The archivists move with quiet precision, passing tablets from one table to another. One man inspects them for cracks before stacking them in wooden trays. Another seals the more important ones with a stamp bearing the king's emblem, a double-headed eagle pressed firmly into the clay. The stamp leaves a mark like a fingerprint of authority. As you watch, the head scribe invites you to follow him deeper into the archive. The air grows cooler and stiller. You enter a side room lined with niches carved into the stone walls, each filled with baked tablets. It feels like walking through an ancient server room, each slot storing a packet of human thought. "This one," he says, pulling out a small reddish tablet, "is a letter from Queen Puduhepa to the pharaoh's wife in Egypt. They discuss children, gods, and, believe it or not, shipping delays." He hands it to you carefully. The writing is so fine it looks like lacework. The words themselves, though long since translated, still hum with warmth. Royal diplomacy, wrapped in everyday friendship. Historians still argue whether Puduhepa's influence was political brilliance or just the natural authority of a woman who refused to be background decoration. Either way, her correspondence helped shape the peaceful years of the empire. You can almost hear her voice echoing in the hall. As the day goes on, the archive shifts tone. New tablets arrive, fresh from the palace, from the fields, from other cities. Couriers bring reports about trade caravans and temple offerings. A messenger bursts in, panting slightly, carrying a sealed tablet from the port city of Ugarit. The head scribe breaks the seal and reads. It's a request for copper shipments delayed by bad weather. Everyone nods sympathetically. Bureaucratic frustration transcends time. One corner table, a younger scribe is writing something unusual, a short poem. He glances around guiltily before continuing. You move closer and read over his shoulder. It's about rain falling on rooftops, about how peace sounds when it hits the ground. His stylus moves faster now, words spilling like he's afraid to lose them. When he finishes, he hides the tablet beneath a stack of accounts. "No one reads poems here," he whispers, "but maybe someday." You can't help but smile. The empire's soul, it seems, isn't just in treaties or taxes. It's in quiet moments like this, when a scribe sneaks poetry into the bureaucracy. The head scribe returns with a cup of barley tea, offering you one as well. It's earthy, a bit bitter, but oddly soothing. He tells you about his years of service, how he's copied everything from hymns to shopping lists, how he once wrote a royal edict that banned overcharging for bread. Peace, he says, is not something the gods give us. It's something we record, so people remember it's possible. Outside, the afternoon light shifts golden. Dust motes float through the beams of sunlight slicing into the room. The scribes work on, steady and sure. Their rhythm feels eternal, like monks in a ritual that keeps the empire's heart beating. You take a final look at the shelves. So many words, all carved by hand, each one a fragment of a civilization's voice. You imagine what future ages will think when they dig these up, how they'll marvel at the precision, the patience, the sheer devotion to memory. And perhaps they'll wonder, as you do now, if the scribes knew that their quiet work would outlast the empire itself. You step back into the corridor, blinking against the sudden brightness. The sound of scratching styluses fades behind you, replaced by the distant murmur of the city. You realize that while kings may rule and armies may march, it's the scribes who keep time from swallowing everything whole. One of the apprentices runs past you carrying a tray of wet tablets toward the drying yard. You follow, curious, and find rows of clay slabs laid out in the sun like a strange harvest. Some are personal letters, others official decrees. The heat bakes them firm, sealing words into permanence. The smell of drying clay fills the air, sharp and clean. A cat prowls between the trays, tail flicking lazily. Someone throws it a crumb of bread, and it accepts with imperial indifference. You chuckle softly. Even the animals here seem to understand the art of unbothered peace. As evening approaches, the last tablets are gathered and stored away. Lamps flicker to life, casting warm halos against the stone. The scribes stretch their backs, exchange soft jokes, and drift homeward through the cooling air. Another day of memory-making done. You linger a moment longer, watching the golden light fade from the courtyard walls. Somewhere in the distance, a temple bell rings, marking sunset. The echoes fade like the last lines of a song. You take one last breath of clay-dusted air before stepping back into the city's twilight streets, where the next story, the sacred, sunlit world of temples and quiet gods, awaits you. You follow the faint, steady sound of bells up a narrow, winding street lined with limestone walls. The city feels softer here, quieter, as if the air itself walks on tiptoe. You pass a row of shrines carved right into the rock face, each with a flickering oil lamp and a bowl of grain or flowers. The scent of incense drifts through the dusk, thick with cedar and myrrh. At the top of the hill, the temple complex rises before you, massive, serene, and glowing in the evening light. Pillars of red and gold, carved with curling motifs of lightning bolts and bowls, frame the grand entrance. Above it, the symbol of the storm god Teshub gleams faintly, half moon, half thundercloud. You step inside, and the air cools instantly. Shadows ripple along the stone walls, carved with scenes of gods banishing droughts, kings offering sacrifices, and celestial chariots racing through the sky. A low hum fills the hall, a chorus of priests chanting in a language that seems both foreign and familiar. Their voices rise and fall like the tide, hypnotic and slow, as though they're trying not to wake the gods. The mainstream historical fact was a vast and complex pantheon with over 1,000 deities recorded. Each city, valley, and stream seemed to have its own divine patron. The Hittites even had a phrase for it, the 1,000 gods of Hatti. But at the heart of it all were the royal temples like this one, where the high priests, often nobles or even members of the royal family, maintained the delicate balance between humans and the divine. You move deeper into the temple, bare feet on cool flagstones. To your right, a pair of novices are polishing bronze ritual vessels until they gleam. To your left, a priestess arranges flowers and bread on an altar, whispering prayers that sound half like lullabies. There's a deep serenity here, not the solemnity of fear, but the hush of respect. The Hittites, unlike many of their neighbors, didn't seem obsessed with punishment from their gods. Instead, their religion was one of maintenance, care, ritual, balance, as if peace itself was a sacred contract that had to be renewed daily, one careful offering at a time. You pause near a doorway where a gentle draft stirs your hair. It leads into a courtyard bathed in open sky. There, a massive stone stele stands, surrounded by offerings, bowls of honey, milk, and barley, all shimmering in the light of dozens of small oil lamps. A priest in a tall headdress raises a shallow cup toward the heavens, murmuring prayers for rain. You notice, though, that his hands tremble slightly. Later, another priest tells you why. It hasn't rained in 3 weeks. The storm god is resting too deeply. You glance at the offerings, rows of fresh grain, newly churned butter, and think about how fragile peace can be when even the sky gets tired.
Historians still argue whether the Hittites truly believed their gods walked among them or if these rituals were symbolic acts of devotion. Some say the priests saw the gods as literal forces, wind, water, sun, fertility, each needing physical appeasement. Others think they used myth and ritual more as a moral framework, a way to keep society grounded in gratitude and order. Either way, it worked. The peaceful years of the Hittite Empire thrived under the rhythm of this spiritual housekeeping.
One Hittite ritual involved offering a loaf of bread to a river by letting it float away while chanting about washing away impurity. It's possibly the oldest known version of tossing something into water to make a wish, or maybe to cleanse bad luck. If you've ever thrown a coin into a fountain, congratulations! You're continuing a 3,000-year-old Hittite tradition of spiritual littering. You watch as the ceremony ends and the crowd disperses. Some of the priests head toward a side building where the temple kitchens are located. Curious and slightly hungry, you follow. Inside, the smell of roasting barley, honey, and herbs fills the air. A young cook stirs a large pot of spiced stew meant for the priest's evening meal. He grins when he sees you. "The gods eat first," he says, "but we get the leftovers." He gestures toward a small loaf cooling on a clay tray, flatbread brushed with honey and sesame seeds. "It's from the offering table," he adds, "still good." You take a cautious bite. It's sweet, dense, and faintly smoky from the oven. You can almost taste the devotion baked into it. The temple isn't just a place of worship, it's also a hub of community life. Farmers come to offer grain in exchange for blessings on their fields. Soldiers stop by before long journeys to pour out a little beer for protection. Even children wander through, dropping pebbles or flowers before the small household gods set along the wall. You see one boy whisper something into a clay idol's ear before running off. You can't help wondering what secret wish he made. As the sun sinks lower, the temple complex takes on a golden glow. The priests begin preparing for the nightly rites. You follow them up a stairway that leads to the temple roof. From up here, the entire city spreads before you. Rooftops glowing like embers, smoke curling from hearths, the faint laughter of distant voices. The wind brushes your skin like cool silk. On the flat rooftop, an altar faces the horizon where the last sliver of sun is disappearing. The high priest stands beside it, holding a bronze bowl filled with burning herbs. The smoke rises, thick and fragrant, spiraling into the sky. He raises his hands and begins the prayer of evening peace, calling on the gods of sky and earth to bless the night. The words wash over you slowly, like waves of calm. You don't understand the language, but the rhythm carries meaning anyway. This isn't a plea, it's gratitude, routine, ritualized serenity. The kind of devotion that doesn't demand miracles, only continuity. As the stars appear, the ceremony concludes. The priests bow, the lamps are lit, and soft music begins to play. Harps, flutes, and the low hum of a drum. It's mesmerizing, and you find yourself swaying slightly, half lulled into sleep. Then a small figure steps forward, a temple musician, barely older than a teenager, holding a simple wooden flute. She plays a tune that sounds like rain falling on stone. It's light, repetitive, and hauntingly beautiful. The notes float into the night, merging with the wind and distant rustling of trees. For a moment, you can almost believe the gods are listening. You sit on the edge of the roof, legs crossed, watching the city below. Fires burn in hearths, people settle in for supper, and somewhere, a baby cries before being hushed. The ordinary world continues in quiet harmony, anchored by faith and repetition. It strikes you that these peaceful years, the ones history barely remembers, were likely built not by kings or soldiers, but by people like this: priests tending lamps, cooks stirring pots, children whispering wishes. The temple holds it all together, a heartbeat of gratitude pulsing through stone. For the night, he says simply. You sip it slowly, watching the last embers of sunset fade into indigo. Somewhere in the courtyard below, someone laughs softly. The laughter echoes briefly and then disappears into the hush of nightfall. You rise, stretching, feeling the gentle ache of a long day. The wind carries a faint scent of rain now, as if the storm god might finally wake from his nap. You smile to yourself, amused by the thought that somewhere a loaf of bread floating down a river might have done the trick. As you descend the temple stairs, the chanting fades behind you, replaced by the quiet murmur of crickets. The lamps along the stairway flicker low, casting golden halos on the walls. You run your hand along the stone, cool, smooth, ancient, and realize how many hands must have done the same over centuries, all seeking the same peace you feel now. At the base of the stairs, the temple gate stands half open. Beyond it lies the city, sleeping under a silver moon. The wind rustles through olive trees, carrying the faint hum of distant flutes. You take one last look back at the glowing temple, its silhouette calm and unshakable, and then step into the night. Peace, you think, isn't loud. It hums softly, like incense in the dark, asking for nothing but attention. The night air is cooler now, as you wander away from the temple's golden glow, down winding lanes that smell faintly of olive oil and baking bread. The moonlight paints soft silver lines across rooftops and courtyards. You follow the distant sound of laughter, warm, unhurried, human, and soon find yourself near the city's edge, where the houses grow wider, the streets less crowded, and the air rich with the scent of livestock and straw. This is where the farmers live, not the great landowners or overseers, but the smallholders, the quiet backbone of the empire's peace. Their houses are simple, square, built from mud brick and timber, each with a courtyard for animals and storage jars stacked neatly against the wall. You duck through one open doorway, drawn by the glow of a lamp. Inside, a family gathers around a low hearth. A woman ladles thick stew into clay bowls, while a man, his hands rough with calluses, pours barley beer from a jug. Two children sit cross-legged, playing with small carved figures, tiny bowls, sheep, and people made from wood and bone. The fire crackles softly, its warmth spilling into the room. You're invited to sit, of course. In Hittite fashion, hospitality isn't optional. It's a duty, a quiet ritual of its own. The man grins as he pushes a bowl toward you. Eat, he says simply. There's always enough for one more. A mainstream historical fact. Hittite society was largely agrarian, relying on barley, wheat, and emmer for sustenance. Most citizens lived in small villages surrounding the major cities, farming communal fields and paying taxes in grain or livestock. During the peaceful years, these farms thrived, producing enough surplus to feed both the cities and the armies, when there were armies to feed. The stew is hearty, lentils, onions, and a hint of garlic, thickened with crushed grain. You take a slow sip of the beer, slightly sour but refreshing, like liquid bread. The children giggle when you make a face at its sharpness. Their mother laughs, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. You get used to it, she says, or you learn to drink faster. A chicken clucks somewhere outside, and the family dog stretches near the door, rolling onto its back in the universal language of contentment. The night hums with peace, simple, honest peace, the kind born of tired hands and full bellies. After dinner, the man takes a small oil lamp and leads you out into the courtyard. The moon is high now, glowing like polished silver. In the field beyond the fence, rows of barley sway gently in the breeze, whispering like a sleeping ocean. He gestures proudly. The gods have been kind, he says. Good rain this season. Maybe the storm god's finally happy again. He kneels and scoops a handful of soil, letting it trickle through his fingers. Good earth, good sleep, he murmurs.
You nod, though you're not entirely sure whether it's a proverb or just something he made up. It feels true, either way.
He tells you that the farmers follow a strict yearly rhythm: plowing, sowing, harvesting, resting. Each phase marked by festivals and prayers. When the plows first break the earth, they sing songs to wake the fields. When the harvest comes, they feast, not out of greed, but gratitude. Peace is work, he says with a shrug, but good work. Historians still argue whether the Hittite farmers were bound to their land as serfs or had limited freedom as small landowners. Some evidence suggests that during the peaceful years, many had autonomy, able to trade, marry, and pass property to their children. Others think the system was more rigid, tied closely to palace quotas. Whatever the truth, these people didn't seem burdened. They seemed steady, anchored by the cycles of soil and sky. A quirky tidbit from the Hittite archives include not just tax lists, but detailed instructions on how to protect crops from pests. One even recommends sprinkling fine ground copper around the field to scare the bad spirits from the grain. It's either ancient superstition or the first recorded attempt at chemical pest control. You can't decide which is more impressive. The farmer's wife joins you outside, carrying a woven basket of wool she's been spinning. The thread glows pale in the moonlight. "I trade this for salt," she says, "and sometimes dye." She shows you how she spins, twisting the fibers into a single strand, steady and patient. It's hypnotic, watching something so soft become strong under her fingers. "Every thread remembers where it came from," she says quietly. "So we make sure it starts calm." You smile, realizing that even their crafts echo the peace around them. Theirs is a world built not on haste or conquest, but rhythm, repetition, patience, gentle continuity. The children appear again, chasing each other with sticks that become swords and spears in their imaginations. The boy shouts that he's the king. His sister insists she's the sun goddess. The argument dissolves into laughter, and they collapse into the grass. Their father shakes his head. "At least they didn't make me the donkey this time." You laugh softly, but there's something touching about the scene. The myths of gods and kings have trickled down into children's play, living, breathing folklore. Stories that survive not in libraries or temples, but around fires and games and bedtime whispers. The mother calls the children in, and soon the courtyard quiets. The family settles to sleep on mats near the hearth, the dog curling at their feet. You stay outside for a while, gazing at the stars. The constellations look the same, though the names are older. Hittite shepherds once called Orion the bow, and the Pleiades the seeds of heaven. You can see why. The sky feels alive here, full of memory and gentle persistence. You lie back on the cool earth, letting your thoughts drift. The barley rustles softly nearby, the rhythmic whisper of peace itself. Somewhere in the distance, a flute plays, a faint melody from the temple hill. The notes mix with the chirp of crickets, the sigh of wind, and the distant call of a night bird. Your eyelids grow heavy, and for a moment, you understand what the farmers meant by good earth, good sleep. You could almost drift off here, under the same stars that watched over them 3,000 years ago. But curiosity keeps you awake just a little longer. You rise quietly, brushing dust from your tunic, and take a slow walk along the edge of the fields. In the faint moonlight, you spot the outlines of irrigation channels, simple, clever ditches that direct water toward every corner of the land. Even here, in their quiet peace, you see the mark of innovation. The Hittites were practical engineers as much as dreamers. They designed efficient canals, granaries, and water systems long before the concept of infrastructure existed. You run your fingers along one of the stone-lined channels. It's dry now, but smooth, worn by centuries of use. On the far end of the field, a small shrine stands. Just a stone set upright, marked with faint carvings. A bowl sits before it, half filled with grain and honey. You kneel beside it instinctively. The offering glows faintly in the moonlight. You whisper something simple, a thank you perhaps, to no one in particular. It feels right. On your way back, the air grows cooler, the horizon paling slightly with the promise of dawn. You hear a rooster crow somewhere beyond the hill, announcing the slow return of light, the first sound of morning. When you re-enter the farmhouse, the fire has burned low. The family still sleeps, bundled in warmth and quiet dreams. You slip through without a sound, stepping once more into the vast, peaceful stillness of Hattusa's countryside. You think of the scribe's words from days before. Dullness keeps the world from breaking. Here, among fields and families, you see what he meant. The steady, uneventful rhythm of ordinary life is what holds civilizations together. The soft heartbeat beneath the noise of history. As the first rays of sun touch the land, you begin to walk toward the distant city once more. Behind you, a child stirs, a rooster calls again, and another peaceful day in the Hittite Empire quietly begins. By the time the sun climbs above the low hills, the world hums gently with motion. You walk along a dusty road that leads toward the city gates, the air warm already and sweet with the scent of grain and distant cooking fires. The peace of the countryside lingers around you like a soft cloak, but the road ahead is busier. Merchants, travelers, and donkeys all moving in the same slow rhythm of trade. A line of carts rattles past, each piled high with goods, bundles of wool, jars of olive oil, and baskets of copper ingots that shimmer dully in the light. The drivers nod as they pass, each with a dust-covered grin that says they've been on the road for days. You catch bits of conversation in different tongues: Hittite, Luwian, Akkadian. The words twist together like strands of rope, each one pulling the empire a little tighter in unity. Trade, you realize, is the bloodstream of this peace. The Hittite Empire sat at the crossroads of ancient trade routes linking Mesopotamia, Anatolia, and the Aegean. From here, tin and copper traveled west to become bronze. Grain and wool moved east. Spices, gold, and cedar wood passed north and south. Hattusa's markets, nestled in the mountain heartland, pulsed with this quiet wealth. You enter the outer market district as the day fully wakes. The sounds hit first, a pleasant chaos of clinking metal, bleating goats, and the rhythmic chant of sellers advertising their wares. The smell follows: spices, roasted grain, cured leather, sweat, and fresh herbs. It's oddly comforting, the scent of life in motion. Stalls line both sides of the road. One merchant displays delicate bronze jewelry that catches the sun. Another offers baskets of figs so ripe they glisten. A potter shapes clay on a foot-powered wheel, his fingers gliding over the wet surface like a musician plucking strings. Every few steps, someone calls to you: "Fine wool, strong rope, honey from the southern valleys." You stop at a stall stacked with pottery painted in ochre and black. The vendor, an older woman with shrewd eyes and a crooked smile, offers you a cup of cool water flavored with mint. "First drink, then bargain," she says. "That's the rule." You sip, grateful. The water tastes faintly of clay and mountain spring. A young man approaches her stall, carrying a basket of eggs wrapped carefully in straw. The woman inspects them, one by one, nodding. They haggle lightly, the tone playful. Eventually, they settle on a trade: 2 small pots for the basket. They seal the deal with a handshake and a laugh. The Hittites didn't invent currency. Barter ruled here, but they mastered fairness. Prices were often standardized by law, recorded on tablets to prevent exploitation. Peace, it seems, wasn't just a matter of treaties and temples. It was baked into the economy itself, a structure that rewarded balance over greed. One quirky Hittite tablet lists the official price of beer, bread, and even laundry services. Another specifies penalties for selling watered-down wine. Apparently, that particular scam was as ancient as wine itself. You weave deeper into the market, watching the easy choreography of trade. A shepherd sells cheese to a baker. A smith hammers new tools while children chase each other between the stalls. There's laughter, but no shouting. Just the slow, content rhythm of people who know each other's faces, who've built trust over years. Historians still argue whether Hittite markets were state-regulated or community-run. Some say the king's officials oversaw every price and shipment, ensuring the flow of taxes to the palace. Others believe local councils handled the details, using communal agreements and temple scribes to keep things fair. Whichever version you prefer, the result feels the same: calm efficiency, born of practice and predictability.
Near the square, you find a merchant from far to the south, a man wearing a linen robe embroidered with faint blue patterns. His stall gleams with exotic goods: lapis lazuli beads, carved ivory, and a small bronze mirror polished to near perfection. He greets you in accented Hittite, his smile both weary and proud. Came from Ugarit, he says. 2 months on the road, worth every mile. He picks up one of the mirrors and holds it out. Made with southern tin, northern copper, he explains. Peace keeps the roads safe enough to make things like this possible. You catch your reflection, a tired traveler, dust on your face, eyes a little softer than before.
You set the mirror down and wander toward a side alley where the noise fades slightly. There, you find the quieter artisans, the makers of things meant not for trade, but for beauty. A sculptor chips at a small limestone statue of a bull, each strike gentle and precise. Beside him, a weaver sits at her loom, the soft thud of wood and the whisper of thread filling the air. Her hands move quickly, pulling colored strands into an intricate pattern of red, gold, and black. You ask how long it takes to make one cloth. She laughs softly. If I hurry, a month, but hurry spoils everything.
Her words linger with you. The whole market, you realize, runs on that same philosophy. Nothing here moves fast. Trade isn't a race. It's a ritual, a daily affirmation that peace still holds. As the day stretches toward noon, the market begins to shift. The sellers call less, the buyers linger in shade, and someone starts playing a slow tune on a lyre. Children nap beside their parents' stalls. An old man snores under a cart. You sit on a low wall, eating a piece of bread spread with goat cheese, watching life drift like a calm river. A group of traders nearby exchange stories. One talks about a caravan ambushed by wild dogs. Another mentions a new road being built toward the sea. A third complains that his donkeys have learned to recognize which sacks hold dates and now sneak bites during rest stops. Everyone laughs, and for a moment, the conversation feels as timeless as the dust beneath your feet. You catch sight of a palace official moving through the crowd, tablet in hand. He stops at each stall, noting quantities and exchanging seals. The merchants greet him respectfully, not fearfully. You notice his easy posture. This isn't the presence of oppression, but of maintenance. The empire's peace depends on records, fairness, and trust. As the official passes, he nods to you. Trade is quieter than war, he says dryly, but it fills more bellies. Then he moves on, stylus tapping softly against the clay tablet. You find yourself smiling. It's such an ordinary statement, and yet it carries the weight of civilization itself. The afternoon heat settles like a blanket. The smells shift again. Warm bread, sweet figs, and something faintly metallic from the smithy nearby. You wander toward it, drawn by the rhythmic clanging. Inside, sparks leap from an anvil as 2 smiths shape a blade. The younger one wipes sweat from his brow, and the older nods approvingly. We don't make swords much these days, the older smith says, mostly plowshares and hinges, but I like to keep the craft alive, just in case. His tone isn't dark, more practical, almost amused.
You suspect he knows that peace, like metal, must be tempered now and then. He dips the blade into water with a hiss of steam. There, he says, strong but not brittle. That's the trick. You glance at the glowing steel and can't help thinking that maybe the same could be said of the Empire itself. Outside again, the shadows lengthen. The market begins to quiet as merchants pack their goods, laughing softly, waving to friends. A few lamps flicker to life as dusk approaches, their flames dancing like tired hearts. You sit once more by the road, watching the crowd thin. A dog trots past with a scrap of bread. Someone hums an old song about harvest and rain. The peace here feels fragile and eternal at once, like the hush between breaths. You think about how all of this, the laughter, the bargaining, the smell of mint water and baked bread, is what historians often skip over when they talk about empires. Yet it's here, in these slow markets and quiet hands, that civilization truly lives. As the first stars appear, a merchant lights a lantern and raises it high. The glow reflects on his face, soft and golden. "Another good day," he says to no one in particular, and he's right. You rise, stretching, and begin your walk back toward the city's heart. Behind you, the market murmurs its last lullaby of the day, rustling tarps, clinking jars, the faint sound of contentment folding itself into night. Evening drapes softly over the stone walls of Hattusa. The heat of the day loosens its hold, replaced by a faint, pleasant chill that brushes against your skin like silk. The marketplace has emptied, leaving behind the scent of dust, grain, and the last traces of roasted meat. Smoke rises from scattered hearths, thin and blue, curling lazily upward until it dissolves into the violet sky. You walk along a narrow street paved with uneven stones. Each step echoes quietly between mud brick walls, where families now gather in courtyards lit by small oil lamps. The flickering light reveals snippets of life: children playing with carved wooden toys, women spinning thread, men mending sandals or weaving baskets for tomorrow's work. The calm feels universal, timeless, as though every city that has ever lived ends its day in a similar rhythm. Somewhere nearby, a mother hums an old lullaby in Hittite, her voice low and rhythmic. The melody carries through the air, weaving around the soft rustle of night insects. You can't understand every word, but the feeling is clear. A song of comfort, of protection, of love that has survived countless generations. A small temple bell rings in the distance, marking the transition from day to night. The people of Hattusa, even after all their centuries of empire and war, still honor the cycle of the sun and moon. To them, peace is not an absence of conflict, but the maintenance of balance between day and night, gods and humans, work and rest. You pause at a crossroads where three streets meet. Ahead, the great walls of the upper city rise, outlined in the dying light. Beyond them lies the temple district, where priests and priestesses prepare for the nightly offerings. You decide to follow the faint sound of chanting that drifts from that direction. The road climbs gently upward. To your left, you pass a line of houses where clay lamps glow through latticed windows. To your right, the land falls away into darkness, where the faint silver thread of a river glimmers in the distance. You notice how carefully the stones of the city are laid, how smoothly the walls curve. Even after centuries, the craftsmanship endures, a quiet testament to the devotion that built this place. By the time you reach the temple gate, the stars have begun to appear. The sky looks endless, deep blue fading toward black, pierced by the first pale fires of constellations. The Hittites read stories in those stars, of gods who guided harvests, storms, and dreams. One of the priests once said that each soul had a star that watched over it, flickering faintly above the world it once walked. Inside the temple courtyard, the air smells of incense and oil. A small group of priests stands near an altar, their robes white and simple. They move slowly, almost reverently, arranging bowls of barley, small cups of wine, and plates of bread. This is not a grand ceremony, but a quiet one, a daily act of thanks to the gods for the peace that holds the land. The high priest, a man with hair the color of ash, steps forward. He lifts his hands toward the darkening sky and begins to chant. His voice is low but resonant, carrying easily through the stillness. The words are ancient, older than most of the stones around you. They call on the storm god Tarhuna and the sun goddess Arina, guardians of order and light. You listen, eyes half closed. The cadence of his chant is hypnotic, like waves breaking on a distant shore. For a moment, time blurs. The noise of the city fades, and all that exists is the rhythm of breath and voice. When the chant ends, the priests leave the offerings on the altar and bow deeply. The high priest murmurs something, perhaps a blessing, then steps back into the shadows. One of the younger acolytes lights small lamps along the edges of the courtyard. Their glow reflects off the polished stone floor, creating the illusion of stars scattered at your feet. You stand there quietly, feeling the peace settle in your chest. It's not a dramatic, holy revelation, just a soft calm, like a blanket pulled up on a cool night. Nearby, a group of temple scribes sits under a portico, working even at this hour. Clay tablets lie scattered around them, etched with wedge-shaped marks that record prayers, trade, and law. The stylus moves swiftly in the lamplight, the sound of scratching clay faint but steady. One of the scribes looks up and smiles politely. "Peace keeps us busy," he says. "There's always something to record." He gestures to a stack of tablets. "We write everything. The weight of grain, the offerings to each god, even dreams the priests have during sleep." You ask him about the dreams, curious. He nods. "Yes, sometimes the gods speak through them. Sometimes they're just dreams. But we record them all the same." He pauses, thinking. It's strange, isn't it? To believe that even dreams must be written down? You smile. Maybe that's how they last. He considers that, then nods slowly. Yes, maybe that's why we remember anything at all. You thank him and move on, leaving the temple behind. The road back toward the residential quarter is quieter now. The stars shimmer brightly overhead, and a soft wind moves through the cypress trees. Somewhere, an owl calls. You pass a courtyard where a family is eating their evening meal by lamplight. The father tears bread into pieces and passes them around. The children giggle over a small bowl of honey. The mother leans back, looking at the sky, humming softly again. The sound is simple, human, eternal. Farther down, a group of young men sits by a wall, playing a quiet game with carved stones. One of them waves at you, offering a friendly grin. "Join?" he asks. You sit for a while, watching as they flick the small stones into marked circles, laughing when someone misses. The rules are simple, the stakes low, a few figs perhaps, but the joy is real. It strikes you then that these moments of shared laughter, of quiet song, of flickering light, is what peace truly looks like. Not the grand proclamations of kings or the treaties carved into stone, but the ordinary rhythm of people simply living. A gentle breeze carries the smell of baked grain from a nearby oven. The last embers of the day's work fade, and the city's night song deepens, the soft murmur of talk, the rustle of fabric, the occasional distant bark of a dog. You feel the world slowing, like a great heart settling into rest. Before returning to your quarters, you stop at a small shrine built into the wall of a house. A single lamp burns before a stone carving of the sun goddess, her features serene and kind. Someone has placed a few wildflowers at her feet.
You kneel briefly, not as a believer, but as a visitor who understands the gesture. You whisper a simple thought into the quiet. Gratitude. For peace, for calm, for the beauty of things that last. Then you rise and continue down the street.
At the edge of the city, near the gate, the guards sit talking in low voices. Their spears lean casually against the wall. One of them is dozing, his helmet tilted forward. The others nod as you pass. There's no tension in their posture, no fear of attack tonight. The Empire's heart beats steadily in its sleep. You pause once more and look back. The city glows faintly in the distance, its rooftops silvered by starlight. Somewhere inside those walls, the scribes still write, the priests still whisper, and families drift into dreams. The world feels vast and small all at once.
You take a deep breath of the cool night air. The silence is not empty. It hums softly with life, as though the stones themselves remember the voices that have filled them for centuries. The stars above shimmer like the eyes of ancient gods still watching over their people, perhaps pleased, perhaps merely patient. You think about the scribe's words. We record even the dreams. Maybe this is why we tell stories too, so that moments like this, so fleeting, so quiet, might be remembered, even when the temples fall and the tablets turn to dust. The wind picks up, rustling the grass outside the city walls. You pull your cloak tighter and smile faintly. Tomorrow, the market will open again. The priests will sing, the scribes will write, and life will continue, slowly, peacefully, beautifully. And somewhere in the heart of Hattusa, the dream of peace will write itself once more into clay. Morning comes with the soft clatter of hammers. It's not the sharp, chaotic clang of war forges, but a gentler rhythm, steady, deliberate, and almost melodic. You follow the sound through Hattusa's narrow streets, past the baker's corner where the smell of fresh bread still lingers, until you find yourself standing before a courtyard filled with the quiet industry of artisans at work. A bronze worker crouches over his anvil, sleeves rolled to his elbows, face lit by the glow of the small charcoal furnace beside him. He moves with an easy patience, tapping, shaping, and cooling the metal with a hiss that mingles with the morning air. You watch as the dull lump of bronze transforms beneath his hands, first into a curve, then a handle, then something almost delicate. He glances up and grins, teeth bright against soot-streaked skin. A hinge, he says simply, for the palace doors. They always need new ones. You'd think gods themselves swing them too hard. You laugh softly. A hinge, you repeat, not a sword then. He shakes his head. No swords. Not anymore. Bronze should serve peace as well as war, don't you think? It's a line that feels rehearsed but true, and you nod. Around him, other craftsmen hum and chatter, each working at their own pace, some polishing small mirrors, others engraving lines into ceremonial daggers meant to be displayed, not used. The air smells of heat and metal, but there's something tranquil in it too, as though even the fire has learned to burn quietly. Beyond the bronze workers' courtyard lies the potter's quarter. You wander in, greeted by rows of drying vessels lined up in the sun. A woman kneels beside her wheel, her hands slick with clay. The wheel turns slowly, spun by her bare foot, and you watch as her fingers coax a lump of earth into something graceful and balanced. She doesn't look up when she speaks. Most people think potters shape clay, she murmurs, but really, the clay shapes us. You can't rush it. Try to hurry, and it collapses on you. The soft hum of her wheel fills the air, blending with the faint sound of a lute from a nearby house. The rhythm of work here feels like a lullaby, gentle, repetitive, endlessly circular. You move from workshop to workshop, each space a quiet pocket of creation. There are weavers spinning dyed wool into intricate patterns deep blues, soft golds, and earthy reds meant for palace robes and temple draperies. A group of children sit by the looms, learning to knot and twist the threads under their mother's guidance. Every now and then, one of them giggles when a knot goes wrong, and the mother sighs theatrically, though her eyes are smiling.
Nearby, a jeweler sits under the shade of a fig tree, squinting through the morning light as he strings small beads of lapis and amber. These stones, he says, holding one up between his fingers, come from lands farther than you can walk in a lifetime, from the mountains beyond the sea. He pauses, turning the bead so that it catches a flicker of sun. Funny, isn't it? All that distance, and it ends up here on someone's neck. You ask him how such things reach Hattusa, and he gestures vaguely toward the horizon. Caravans, ships, trades between kings, and luck. Always luck.
The idea that something so small can carry the weight of continents feels oddly comforting. A bead from afar, a hinge for a palace door, a pot for someone's table. Every object here hums with quiet purpose. You pass a small group of apprentices sitting cross-legged around an older sculptor who carves a lion from limestone. The chisel strikes softly, each tap revealing muscle, paw, and snarl. But even the snarl is serene, almost thoughtful. The sculptor pauses, blowing dust from the lion's face. The kings used to ask for fierce ones, he says, eyes wide, mouths open. But now, they ask for lions that look like they're resting. You tilt your head? Because the empire is resting too?
He smiles faintly. Maybe, or maybe they've finally learned that power doesn't always need to shout. It's a good line, one that lingers long after you've moved on. In another courtyard, women gather around vats of dye, dipping cloth into swirling blues and reds. The colors bloom, darken, and shift as they lift the fabric into sunlight. Their laughter floats through the air as they talk about weather, food, and gossip from the palace. You catch a snippet. Apparently, one of the queen's attendants has been seen sneaking bread to the palace cats, who now treat her like royalty herself.
Peace makes room for such stories, doesn't it? For cats fattened by kindness, for laughter between looms, for kings who commission calm lions instead of roaring ones. You step into a narrow side street where the air is cooler. A faint metallic ringing draws your attention. Another craftsman, another quiet creation. This one, though, is different. A slender man sits surrounded by strange objects, bells, small gongs, and bits of shaped bronze that shimmer when touched. He's tuning one of the bells with tiny, precise taps. "Soundsmith," he says, noticing your curiosity. "I make voices for temples."
He gestures to a hanging set of small chimes that tremble in the wind, producing a sound that feels almost like water moving through air. You listen, eyes closed for a moment. "It's beautiful," you murmur. He nods. "It's supposed to be. The gods like soft sounds better than harsh ones. Or so I tell myself." He pauses, then adds dryly, "Historians still argue whether the gods actually listened." You laugh quietly, one of those small shared laughs that exist between strangers who understand the joke of human faith.
The sound of the chimes follows you as you continue walking, blending with distant laughter and the steady heartbeat of hammer against bronze. Every sound here feels deliberate, part of a larger music that only peace can compose. You stop at a fountain in a small square. The water spills gently from the carved mouth of a bull into a basin surrounded by moss. Children splash at the edges, their laughter ringing across the stones. A few women rest nearby, gossiping softly while they fill clay jars. One of them, seeing you watching, smiles and offers a simple greeting. "Good day, traveler. May your hands never be empty." You return the blessing, an old Hittite saying you've picked up in your time here. It feels fitting for this place, where everyone's hands seem always busy, shaping, creating, repairing. Later, as the day wanes, you climb toward the palace terrace. From up here, The city stretches out below you like a woven cloth. Each courtyard, street, and market square a thread in the great tapestry of peace. The smoke of the forges rise lazily, tinted gold by the sunset. You realize, watching the artisans from this height, that empires are remembered for their wars, but they survive through their craftsmanship. The peace of the Hittites lives not in decrees or armies, but in hinges, pots, beads, and bells. As the sun dips lower, the bronze worker from the morning closes his forge. He wipes his hands on his apron, then looks up at the sky and nods slightly, as if acknowledging the day's work. Somewhere nearby, the potter stacks her finished jars. The weavers fold their dyed cloths, and the sculptor lays down his chisel. The city exhales. Even the chimes quiet down, their last notes fading into the warm hush of dusk. You stay on the terrace a while longer, feeling the peace of the empire settle around you like soft dust. The artisans' work will outlast them, maybe even outlast the empire itself. A hinge that will still turn, a pot that will still hold grain, a bead that will still glow blue long after the walls of Hattusa crumble. It's a thought that's both comforting and bittersweet. Before heading back down, you look once more at the city below. The fires are starting to light, one by one, each forge, each home, each lamp in the temple. The glow gathers slowly, like embers collecting in the heart of the earth. You whisper to yourself, barely audible, power doesn't always need to shout. The words echo softly against the stone. Somewhere, faintly, the bronze worker's hammer begins again. One last quiet strike before the night fully takes hold. Night settles over Hattusa with a soft, almost imperceptible sigh. The streets are quiet now, save for the occasional murmur of conversation or the distant bark of a dog. Lanterns flicker in doorways, casting warm, trembling light across mud brick walls. You walk along the upper city streets, the stones beneath your feet cool from the evening air, the sounds of the city muted like a lullaby. You pass small family homes where curtains are drawn, and you catch glimpses of life inside, flickering shadows of people eating, cleaning, or talking in low voices. The scent of baked bread mingles with the faint tang of barley beer, lingering from the day's meals. Somewhere, a child coughs softly before being comforted, the hush almost rhythmic, like a heartbeat syncing with the quiet of the night. The mainstream historical fact, the Hittites placed great importance on domestic life. Households often included extended families, with multiple generations living under one roof. Rooms were divided to accommodate work, sleep, and storage, while courtyards served as centers for cooking, craft, and social interaction. Even during times of war, records suggest families valued continuity, ritual, and daily routines above all else. You follow a winding lane toward the city's walls, where a small guard post sits, lit by a single oil lamp. The two sentries exchange soft words, yawns muffled, and gestures that speak of trust built over months and years. Their weapons rest nearby, but their stance is relaxed, the tension of battle absent. The Empire's peace isn't just an abstract idea, it's felt in these moments, in the slow, steady confidence of people who know their city is safe. Beyond the walls, the mountains rise in shadowy blue shapes against the night sky. A thin river threads through the valley, reflecting the first hints of moonlight. You notice faint ripples where fish surface, their movements delicate, precise, and unconcerned with the affairs of men. It strikes you that, in this empire, even nature seems to move in harmony with the human world, a slow, deliberate rhythm that mirrors peace. A quirky tidbit, some Hittite inscriptions include instructions for placing small clay figures of animals in household corners to invite quiet and contentment. Archaeologists debate whether these were spiritual talismans or playful charms for children,
But either way, you can imagine families tucking them under mats or on shelves, tiny guardians of serenity.
You climb the steps leading to the upper terraces, where the palace looms, quiet and imposing under the starry sky. The high walls glow faintly in the light of lanterns placed along their battlements. Despite its formidable appearance, the palace hums with calm tonight. Servants move silently through corridors, carrying lamps and baskets of food. Courtiers murmur softly as they make their way to private quarters. Peace, you realize, isn't the absence of palace walls, but the measured life within them. Inside a courtyard, a fountain trickles gently. Its water catches the lantern light, scattering it in delicate, shifting patterns across the stone floor. You sit on the fountain's edge and listen to the soft splashes, the whisper of wind, and the occasional rustle of leaves. Somewhere nearby, a lyre begins to play a slow, unhurried melody. The notes drift through the palace, weaving between columns and walls, creating a tapestry of sound that feels both ancient and timeless. Historians still argue whether these palace musicians performed for religious purposes, entertainment, or simple relaxation. Some suggest that music was used to mark the hours, soothe visitors, or maintain ritual continuity. Others believe it had purely aesthetic value, meant to enhance the atmosphere of refined courtly life. Either way, the effect on you is undeniable. A sense of calm, a gentle cadence that slows your thoughts. You wander deeper into the palace, past storage rooms stacked with jars of oil, grain, and wine. The stone floors are worn smooth by generations of footsteps. You notice inscriptions on the walls, faint and elegant, listing kings, treaties, and legal decrees. Even here, where authority is centralized, there is no rush, no tension, only quiet diligence. A palace cook emerges from the kitchen, carrying a tray of flatbreads scented with sesame and honey. He offers one to you, smiling faintly. "For the night," he says, "even the king doesn't go to sleep hungry." You take it gratefully. It's warm, soft, and faintly sweet, the kind of simple comfort that seems to embody the essence of this peaceful empire. In a nearby hall, a scribe works by lamplight, scratching wedge-shaped marks into a clay tablet. You watch the stylus move, precise and methodical, each line forming laws, trade agreements, and records of offerings. His face is serene, illuminated by the lamp's flicker. You realize that this meticulous care, recording every detail, is a cornerstone of the Hittite peace. Order and attention to small acts create stability across generations. You leave the hall and ascend a narrow stairway to a balcony overlooking the city. From this height, Hattusa spreads below like a patchwork of lights and shadows. Courtyards glow softly, the temple's lamps flicker faintly in the distance. The market square is empty, its stones cooling from the day's warmth. The empire feels quiet yet alive, held together by thousands of small, deliberate actions. A breeze carries the faint scent of cedar and herbs from a nearby garden. You lean against the railing, inhaling deeply. Somewhere in the distance, an owl calls, its voice low and steady. The stars above seem closer, brighter, like distant witnesses to the life unfolding below. You remember the strange little talismans you saw earlier, clay animals tucked in corners, and imagine that the city itself is dotted with unseen guardians, small but effective, keeping peace alive. Young courtier approaches, carrying a bowl of cool water. "Even in peace," he says quietly, "one must stay alert." He smiles faintly. But tonight, the alertness is gentle. You accept the water, sipping slowly, letting the coolness linger. It tastes faintly of minerals and sky, refreshing in a way that feels almost ceremonial. The night deepens. Lanterns burn low, the palace corridors quiet. Somewhere in the distance, a bell rings softly,
marking the hour with a sound both functional and comforting. You realize the bell's rhythm mirrors life itself, a heartbeat of calm and order, guiding the city gently through the night.
A scholar walks past you, carrying a small tablet of clay. She pauses on the balcony, looking out at the city with a faint smile. "We record everything," she says softly, almost to herself, "so that even if walls fall, even if kings are forgotten, the memory of peace endures." You nod, feeling the weight and truth of her words. The empire's greatness is not only in its walls or armies, but in its care for memory, continuity, and daily life. Peace, in this light, is a deliberate act, 1,000 small choices woven into the fabric of society.
Below, the city's streets hum with soft nocturnal life. A dog trots past, a distant child coughs, and someone murmurs a lullaby. The palace lights glow faintly in the distance, a gentle heartbeat echoing through stone and air. The high terrace offers you a final view before retiring. Hattusa, alive, calm, enduring. You realize that here, in this city perched among mountains and rivers, peace is tangible. It's in the glow of lamps, the precision of scribes, the rhythm of artisans, and the patience of those who work quietly to maintain balance. Even in the shadow of history's great events, these small acts matter, more than any conquest, louder than any trumpet, quieter but infinitely more lasting. You breathe in the night, the cool air brushing against your skin. Somewhere far below, a bell rings again, marking the night's rhythm. You watch the stars, the faint shimmer of temple lamps, and the slow, steady life of Hattusa. Peace, you think, is this a collection of gentle rhythms, deliberate acts, and the quiet dedication of countless hands? And tonight, for this city and its people, it is fully alive. The morning fog drifts lazily across the hills surrounding Hattusa, softening the edges of the city like a watercolor wash. You step into the streets while the city still sleeps, in that liminal hour when light and shadow mingle. The air is cool, carrying the scent of dew-soaked earth, baked bread from early risers, and the faint tang of the river far below. It's the perfect time to wander, when the empire feels suspended in its own heartbeat. Hattusa's urban planning reflected careful consideration of both defense and daily life. Streets twisted and turned, not only to confuse potential invaders, but to maximize shade, funnel breezes, and create pockets for public life. Markets, temples, and workshops, all blending seamlessly into the residential quarters. Peace was built into the very design of the city, though you might not notice it at first glance. You follow a narrow lane that slopes gently downward toward the lower city, the stones still slick with moisture from the night. A farmer moves along, leading a pair of goats by a rope. Their bells jingle softly, a gentle music that harmonizes with the distant calls of morning birds. You pass small courtyards where children are just beginning to stir, rubbing sleepy eyes and stretching their limbs. A mother hums a lullaby she probably started last night and continues here, the melody carrying faintly across the street. Nearby, the baker opens his doors, steam curling from clay ovens as he slides flatbreads and honey cakes into the baskets that line his stall. He nods at you without words. It's a nod that communicates everything: continuity, routine, and the subtle satisfaction of a day begun properly. You wander further, drawn to the sound of water trickling over stone. At the center of a quiet square, a small fountain glimmers in the soft sunlight breaking through the fog. Its surface is calm, reflecting the pastel sky, and a few children kneel beside it, their laughter hesitant, careful, like ripples on a pond. The water is clear enough to see small fish darting beneath the surface, oblivious to the empire above them. Some clay tablets suggest that Hittite children played with miniature versions of these fountains, tiny clay channels and basins arranged in sandboxes to imitate the irrigation systems that sustain the fields.
Perhaps even then, they learned that life and peace depended on the careful flow of water, a lesson disguised as play. You move on toward the artisan's quarter. Already, the day is stirring with soft, deliberate energy. A potter molds a new vessel on her wheel, her hands steady and sure. The clay breathes beneath her touch, responding to centuries of practiced patience. Nearby, a weaver threads colored wool through a loom, the sound rhythmic and almost hypnotic. It's easy to imagine that these actions themselves are a form of meditation, the repetition of hand and eye, maintaining not only commerce, but inner calm. Historians still argue whether these craft guilds were formally organized or operated more informally as family-run operations. Some tablets suggest regulations, payments, and apprenticeship systems were standardized. Others imply a looser, community-based structure, dependent on trust and shared knowledge. Either way, you sense the unity and continuity that allow peace to persist quietly in workshops and courtyards alike. You pause at a bronzesmith's forge, or a young apprentice hammers small pieces of metal while the master guides him patiently. Sparks leap with soft pops into the air, illuminating the concentration on their faces. The master pauses to polish a finished hinge and holds it up against the morning light. Even small things matter, he says. This hinge may hold a palace door for a century or more. That's peace in action. It's a simple observation, but profound. You realize that this empire is held together by countless small contributions: hinges, pots, woven cloth, measured grain. Each acts as a silent pledge to continuity, a quiet assurance that the wheels of civilization turn smoothly when no one is looking. You leave the forge and wander toward a nearby temple. The priests are beginning their morning rituals, though the chants are soft, almost conversational. Incense curls in the air, delicate and subtle, and the scent of oil from lamps blends with it, creating a warm, enveloping atmosphere. One of the priests notices you watching from the doorway and nods in greeting. You bow slightly, acknowledging the ritual without disturbing it. Inside, the temple scribes are already at work. Their styluses scratch faintly against clay tablets, recording offerings, taxes, and local events. You notice the meticulous care with which each tablet is created. Even the smallest mistake is corrected immediately. The scribe's focus is absolute, yet there's no urgency, no harsh tension, only the steady pulse of order maintained through attentive, patient work. Some tablets from Hattusa list unusual offerings requested by households, such as a specific number of pigeons for a minor deity, or honey mixed with saffron for a sun god. Scholars still debate whether these reflect actual practice, symbolic gestures, or the playful whims of temple officials. But it's amusing to imagine a priest carefully counting pigeons while humming a tune. You step back outside, the sun now higher in the sky, spilling warm light across the city. The streets are filling slowly with the rhythm of daily life. Children running, merchants setting up stalls, women carrying water from the fountain, and men tending to animals or carts. The pace is unhurried, measured, almost ceremonious. You wander toward a small garden tucked behind a row of houses. Herbs grow thickly here: thyme, mint, and a faintly sweet grass you cannot identify. A woman kneels among the plants, clipping sprigs and whispering to them as if coaxing them to grow. She looks up and smiles. "Good herbs, good sleep," she says simply. You nod, realizing that care for small details, even plants, is a reflection of the empire's broader calm. The garden seems like a microcosm of Hattusa itself, careful, deliberate, and thriving under quiet attention. Every leaf, every stone, every drop of water contributes to a larger balance, a harmony that extends beyond the walls into the lives of everyone who walks these streets. You walk slowly back toward the main square, pausing occasionally to listen to the soft cadence of the city.
Somewhere, a lyre plays a gentle tune. In another corner, a child laughs at a friend's clumsy attempt to juggle small stones. A dog trots past, carrying a scrap of bread in its mouth, and the baker waves at you as he moves between stalls.
You take it all in, feeling the deep, abiding rhythm of peace, the quiet music of daily life, uninterrupted by fear, war, or urgency. It's a fragile yet persistent pulse, a reminder that the Hittite Empire's true strength lies not in walls or weapons, but in the deliberate cultivation of calm, continuity, and care. As you move toward the palace terraces, the morning settles fully into day. Sunlight spills over stone walls, illuminating courtyards, fountains, and workshops. The city breathes steadily, its heartbeat echoed in every hammer, brush, and whispered chant. You realize that this calm, this rhythm, is what allows life to thrive, and perhaps why the empire endured as long as it did. You pause atop a hill overlooking Hattusa. From here, the city stretches out in careful chaos. Streets twisting and turning, courtyards glowing with life, smoke rising from kitchens, and the river glimmering faintly in the distance. The scene is serene yet dynamic, a testament to the quiet diligence that sustains civilization. You inhale deeply, savoring the moment. The sound of artisans, children, and water blends into a single harmonious hum. The empire is alive, but it is gentle, deliberate, and patient. Its peace maintained by countless hands working quietly, rhythmically, and without fanfare. And as you begin to descend back toward the city's heart, you carry with you the realization that the Hittites' greatest legacy may not be their battles or treaties, but this ordinary, extraordinary life, the calm that underpins everything, the peace that allows an empire to endure. The afternoon sun warms the stones of Hattusa, bathing the city in a gentle golden glow. You wander through streets where shadows stretch lazily, softening the sharp lines of buildings and walls. The market is quieter now, mostly empty, save for a few late buyers and merchants packing their goods. The calm is palpable, a deep exhale after the steady rhythm of morning and early day. The mainstream historical fact, the Hittite Empire maintained a network of roads connecting Hattusa to surrounding towns, temples, and trade centers. These roads were carefully constructed for both commerce and administration, allowing messages, supplies, and people to move efficiently across the empire. Though originally designed with military utility in mind, they became arteries for everyday life, supporting trade, travel, and cultural exchange in times of peace. You pause at the edge of a cobblestone lane, where a small group of travelers rests under the shade of a fig tree. Their donkeys graze quietly while they sip from clay jugs of water. One of them, a merchant from the western regions, smiles at you and nods. "The roads are kind today," he says. "No storms, no bandits, just the quiet hum of life." You nod, noting the gentle cadence of his words, which mirrors the rhythm of the city itself. Nearby, a group of craftsmen works on repairs to a building's roof. The clatter of tools is muted, more musical than harsh, blending with the faint buzz of insects and the soft wind rustling through cypress trees. You watch as a young apprentice climbs carefully, carrying a bundle of reeds. His teacher follows, steadying him with words more than hands. "Patience," the teacher says. "Every reed in its place, or the roof will sing a different tune at the first rain." A quirky tidbit, one Hittite tablet lists instructions for constructing reed roofs, noting not only measurements, but also which reeds were considered lucky for long-lasting shelter. Scholars still debate whether these details reflect superstition, practical experience, or perhaps both. A reminder that even mundane tasks carried a touch of the extraordinary. You continue down a narrow street where potters and weavers have gathered. Their workshops hum with quiet activity, clay shapes beneath skilled hands,
Threads glide across looms, and the occasional clink of a tool punctuates the soft sounds. A potter pauses to offer you a small cup of water. "The clay teaches us patience," she says, smiling. "Hurry, and it mocks you. Work slowly, and it serves you well." You take a sip, the cool liquid grounding you as you observe her hands coaxing a vessel into shape. Historians still argue whether craft specialization in Hattusa was strictly organized or more loosely defined. Some suggest formal apprenticeships and guilds regulated who could produce certain items. Others point to family-based workshops and informal mentorship. Either way, the result is evident. The city's artisans carry on centuries of tradition, creating objects both functional and beautiful, sustaining life and culture simultaneously.
The sun climbs higher, and you wander toward the palace terraces. From here, the city unfolds below in a tapestry of rooftops, courtyards, and winding streets. The palace itself seems serene, quiet yet commanding, its walls glowing faintly in the afternoon light. Servants and attendants move with measured steps, attending to tasks without urgency. Even in this hub of administration, the pace is deliberate, reflecting an empire that understands the balance between order and calm.
A small temple nearby begins its afternoon offerings. The priests chant softly, their voices low and rhythmic, almost conversational rather than solemn. Incense curls lazily in the air, mingling with the warm scent of sun-baked stone. You notice a young acolyte carefully arranging bowls of grain, his movements precise yet unhurried. Each offering, each motion, reinforces the sense of order and the quiet maintenance of peace. Some scholars have found Hittite tablets detailing odd ceremonial offerings, small figurines, peculiar foods, or specific grains arranged in exact patterns. The reasoning behind these choices remains a subject of debate. Were they purely symbolic, instructions from the gods, or just the meticulous inclinations of priests? Regardless, the care taken in these rituals contributes to the empire's aura of controlled serenity. You follow a winding stair toward the upper terraces, where the city stretches like a living mosaic. The streets below echo faintly with life. A child chasing a goat, a distant bell marking the hour, and the soft murmur of conversations carried on the warm breeze. You pause near a fountain, its water shimmering in sunlight, the gentle trickle harmonizing with the city's ambient sounds. A young scribe sits nearby, stylus in hand, scratching into a clay tablet. He pauses occasionally to dip it into water, smoothing lines and correcting mistakes. His focus is absolute, yet calm, his work a meditation of record-keeping, each tablet preserving not only law and trade, but the steady rhythm of everyday life. You notice faint inscriptions on a nearby wall, records of grain stores and labor, which seem as mundane as they are essential. The craftspeople, scribes, and priests are all interconnected in their quiet labor. One depends on the other. Grain records enable temple offerings, clay vessels hold food, and bronze tools shape every corner of the city. The interconnectedness reinforces the empire's peace, like gears turning in perfect harmony. Each small act a cog in a vast, delicate mechanism. Historians still argue whether Hittite bureaucrats deliberately cultivated this social cohesion or whether it emerged organically. Some argue that the king's decrees and palace oversight enforced unity, while others see the empire's stability as a byproduct of shared culture, trade networks, and daily routines. Either explanation underscores the role of deliberate, measured action in maintaining peace. You pause at a small courtyard where women and children gather to spin wool. Threads of deep red, golden yellow, and indigo glide through their fingers. Children giggle as they weave, learning the patterns of their ancestors without conscious thought. Nearby, a mother hums an old tune, her voice blending with the soft clinking of tools. You sit quietly, listening to the symphony of calm, ordinary life that forms the backbone of the Hittite world.
The afternoon sun dips lower, casting long shadows across the streets. You notice a man tending to a small herd of goats, calling softly to them as they move across the courtyard. Their bells jingle faintly in harmony with the city's rhythm, a reminder that peace extends beyond human labor, touching animals, gardens, and water alike. By the time you return to the palace terraces, the golden light has softened into a honeyed glow. The city below shimmers with the quiet energy of life maintained in balance. Artisans working, children playing, water flowing, and priests performing rituals without urgency. Hattusa hums with a gentle vitality that is both ordinary and extraordinary, a testament to the careful, deliberate rhythms that sustain an empire in times of peace. You take a slow breath, absorbing the scene. It is a piece not built on fear or vigilance, but on measured work, shared responsibility, and attention to countless small details. The empire persists not because of swords or walls, but because life here flows in a rhythm that has been nurtured, refined, and maintained over generations. You linger a moment longer, feeling the warmth of the sun on your skin and the pulse of Hattusa beneath your feet. Even as the shadows stretch and the day winds toward evening, the sense of calm endures, a reminder that the most enduring legacies of the Hittites may be quiet, subtle, and profoundly human. Evening begins its gentle descent over Hattusa, brushing the city with muted amber and rose tones. The heat of the day slowly fades, replaced by a soft, cool breeze that drifts through narrow lanes and open courtyards. You stroll along the upper city streets, taking your time, feeling the stones underfoot cool and smooth from the afternoon sun. The pace of life here has slowed naturally, as though the city itself is exhaling after a long, steady day. Hittite rulers often emphasized ceremonial displays of generosity and ritual, even during periods of peace. Temples and palaces were not only administrative centers, but spaces for social cohesion, where offerings, festivals, and public gatherings reinforced the bonds between the king, priests, and citizens. Peace was maintained not solely through treaties or military deterrence, but through cultural continuity, shared belief, and deliberate public ritual. You wander toward a quiet square where several households gather near a communal well. Women dip clay jars into the water, children tugging at their skirts and laughing when the jars tip slightly. The chatter is soft, familiar, unhurried. The air is fragrant with herbs planted along the courtyard edges, thyme, dill, and a few bright marigolds. You notice a small bird flitting among the flowers, pecking carefully at seeds while the children play nearby. One tablet describes families leaving small, carved wooden animals near wells as silent witnesses to shared labor, to encourage cooperation, and perhaps to invite good fortune. Scholars still debate whether these were symbolic gestures, superstitious charms, or just the imaginative play of children, but the idea of tiny guardians of peace feels fitting for Hattusa's quiet streets. You follow the sound of faint hammering to a blacksmith's workshop tucked into a corner. The apprentice taps gently at a small bronze hook while the master shapes the final piece. Sparks rise in brief, golden showers, dissipating softly into the evening air. Every nail, every hook, every hinge contributes, the master says without looking up. Small acts, yes, but they hold everything together. You can't help but smile at the simplicity of the statement and the truth it carries. Nearby, a scribe sits at a table in a shaded alcove, stylus in hand, clay tablet in front of him. He pauses occasionally to consult notes, then resumes his careful etching of laws, trade transactions, and temple offerings. His movements are precise yet relaxed, a rhythm cultivated over years. The temple nearby hums with faint chanting, echoing softly through the streets. The combination of writing, singing, and distant laughter creates a soundscape that is comforting in its steadiness.
Historians still argue whether the Hittite administrative system was deliberately designed to enforce social cohesion, or if it evolved more organically from traditions, family structures, and community networks. Either way, the effect is clear. The meticulous documentation, ritual practice, and measured work all knit together a sense of calm and order. You wander past a group of weavers who are finishing long strips of dyed cloth. Indigo, crimson, and ochre threads shimmer in the fading light. The air is filled with the faint, warm scent of wool and natural dye. Children sit nearby, threading spools under the watchful eyes of their mothers, learning the patterns that will later become tapestries or garments. The work is both functional and meditative, creating beauty from patience and repetition. A small street musician plays a soft tune on a lyre, the notes rising and falling like the gentle ripple of a river. The music floats through the open spaces, brushing against the walls, twisting lanes, and shaded courtyards. A cat stretches along a windowsill, tail flicking in time with the melody. Even the city's animals seem in tune with the rhythm of calm, peaceful life. You climb toward the palace terraces, where the view opens wide over the city. The rooftops glow faintly in the fading sun. Courtyards shimmer with light, and the river below glints like silver. The palace itself is quiet, its halls still occupied by a few attendants and scribes working by lantern light. You notice that even the architecture, tall, imposing, yet harmonious, is designed to reinforce calm and control, guiding sight, movement, and perception in subtle ways. Tablets suggest that some palace rooms were deliberately constructed to amplify sound, allowing even the softest conversation to carry across large halls. Historians still argue whether this was a functional choice for communication, a spiritual design to carry prayers, or simply an aesthetic preference. Either way, it adds to the sense of deliberate orchestration in every corner of Hattusa. You pause near a small temple courtyard, where incense curls lazily from tiny lamps. The priests move slowly, performing evening rituals without urgency, each gesture deliberate and precise. Bowls of grain, small vessels of oil, and water offerings are arranged with care. One acolyte glances at you briefly, nodding in greeting, before returning to his task. The scene is serene, almost hypnotic, a meditation in motion. As the sky darkens, lanterns begin to glow along streets, courtyards, and market squares. Their light reflects softly on polished stone and bronze, creating gentle, shifting patterns. The city is alive, but its energy is quiet, measured, and intentional. Peace manifests here not as silence alone, but as a balance between activity and stillness, labor and ritual, laughter and song. You move toward a small garden tucked behind the palace walls, where herbs and flowers grow in carefully arranged beds. The scent of mint and rosemary drifts on the breeze, blending with the fading warmth of the day. A young girl tends the garden, humming softly as she prunes, arranging, and waters the plants. Her quiet diligence mirrors the city's broader rhythm, small acts accumulating to create a sustained, deliberate harmony. The sun dips below the horizon, painting the sky with deep shades of violet and crimson. Lanterns and oil lamps glow softly, reflecting in water basins and polished bronze, creating a scene both intimate and expansive. Hattusa breathes in unison, a city alive in its subtle details, its citizens participating in a quiet, shared covenant of peace. You pause at a balcony overlooking the city, taking in the scene. The sound of water from fountains, soft music from a lyre, children laughing, and artisans working blends into a single, soothing symphony. Each small act of care, whether shaping clay, threading wool, or lighting a lamp, is part of a larger rhythm, a testament to the Hittites' deliberate cultivation of peace. You realize that the empire endures not through force alone, but through attention, craft, ritual, and community.
The quiet persistence of everyday life, the careful maintenance of order, and the gentle unfolding of daily rhythms are the true backbone of the Hittite world. As night deepens, a soft breeze carries the smell of herbs, earth, and river water. You breathe slowly, savoring the warmth and calm that wraps around the city. Hattusa's streets, terraces, and courtyards shine in the lamp glow, a living testament to an empire's commitment to balance, rhythm, and quiet continuity. And as you step back into the winding lanes, you carry with you the sense that peace is not abstract. It is tangible, held in stone, clay, thread, and water, in the care of hands and the rhythm of hearts that beat together across generations. The night deepens over Hattusa, draping the city in soft indigo and silver. Lanterns glow along streets and terraces, casting long, wavering shadows across walls and cobblestones. The air is cool and still, carrying the subtle scent of baked bread from evening meals, faint smoke from hearths, and the earthy aroma of the river nearby. You move slowly, deliberately, savoring each quiet sound and movement, noticing how the empire hums gently even as most of its people retreat indoors. Hittite households often centered around a courtyard, which served as the hub for cooking, craft, and social interaction. Even at night, these spaces provided light, air, and a sense of community as families gathered for meals, stories, and small domestic rituals. The layout of homes and neighborhoods encouraged interaction while maintaining privacy, balancing the needs of individual families with the cohesion of the city. You wander past a courtyard where a mother rocks her infant, humming a low melody as the child's small hands curl and uncurl. The courtyard is filled with quiet movement. A pot simmers on the fire, a dog curls at the edge of the stone floor, and lanterns sway gently in the evening breeze. The sound is understated but comforting, the kind of domestic music that underpins generations of calm living. Nearby, a young potter dips her hands into a soft, moist mound of clay. The clay yields to her touch, slowly taking the shape of a bowl. Her movements are precise but unhurried, a practiced rhythm that feels almost like breathing. You watch as she smooths the surface, taps it lightly with her fingers, and sets it to dry near a warm corner. This, too, is peace, the steady creation of objects meant to endure, functional and graceful, the result of care repeated day after day. One tablet records that Hittite families would sometimes leave small clay figurines near bowls of grain to encourage good dreams or ward off restless spirits. Scholars still debate whether this was a ritual, superstition, or playful custom, but the intent seems clear. These tiny acts of care were meant to stabilize both home and mind, a gentle attention to life's details. You continue through narrow streets, the faint jingle of a goat's bell accompanying you. A blacksmith's forge glows in the distance, a single lamp highlighting the steady swing of a hammer. Sparks leap briefly, then fade, and the master watches over his apprentice with a soft, knowing eye. Precision is peace, he mutters to you without breaking stride. Haste is chaos, but care builds legacies. You nod, thinking of every hinge, every nail, every carefully crafted vessel in the city. Small things that carry the weight of continuity. In another courtyard, a scribe works by lamplight, scratching carefully into a clay tablet. The stylus glides smoothly, etching laws, trade records, and offerings. Each stroke feels deliberate, almost meditative. Historians still argue whether the Hittite scribes approached their work as ritual, practical necessity, or art. But the effect on the city is undeniable. Clarity, memory, and rhythm maintained across generations. You pass a group of women spinning wool, their spindles turning softly, threads twisting into coherent patterns. The air is filled with a faint hum, the subtle blending of movement, conversation, and the occasional soft laugh. Children sit nearby, learning by watching, their hands mimicking motions that will become second nature. You realize that peace isn't only measured by absence of conflict, but by the continuation of craft, learning, and care across age groups. A small temple courtyard catches your attention. Incense coils rise from tiny lamps, their fragrance mingling with the night air. Priests perform evening rituals, hands moving slowly, deliberately. Bowls of water, oil, and grain are arranged with careful symmetry. The movements are soft and almost hypnotic, a choreography designed to maintain spiritual order as much as social stability. A young acolyte glances at you briefly before returning to his work, eyes focused, calm, and purposeful. Some temples featured specially designed acoustics so that even whispers of ritual could carry across large halls. Scholars still argue whether this was functional, ceremonial, or purely aesthetic, but it creates a sense of spatial serenity. Every sound, every echo is part of the city's broader harmony. You climb to the palace terraces, where the view unfolds wide and gentle. The city stretches below, rooftops glowing softly, courtyards flickering with lantern light. The river reflects the stars above, mirroring the tranquility of the night. You notice figures moving silently, artisans finishing late work, scribes recording the day's accounts, children whispering in corners. Each action, small and deliberate, contributes to the empire's continuity and calm. Historians still argue whether the Hittites consciously engineered peace or whether it emerged from tradition, habit, and community, but the result is visible everywhere. Lamps glow, fires burn steadily, water flows, bells chime softly. The city exists in a state of equilibrium, maintained not by walls or armies alone, but by everyday care, rhythm, and attention. You pause to watch a young boy releasing a tiny clay boat into the fountain. It drifts lazily, following the gentle current, spinning once before settling near the edge. You realize that even play is deliberate here, echoing patterns of water, stone, and human interaction, teaching lessons in patience and observation. From your vantage point, the city hums like a living organism. The pace is steady, soft, and sustained. Every street, courtyard, and terrace is part of a network of care. Artisans, scribes, priests, children, animals, and plants. Each contributes in small ways, yet the sum of these actions is the empire itself, a web of deliberate, gentle attention. As the night deepens further, stars emerge above, mirrored in lamps and fountains below. The city breathes in unison, a rhythm of calm continuity. Even the wind seems to carry purpose, rustling leaves, lifting scents of herbs, and whispering softly through the alleyways. You feel the full weight and lightness of Hattusa's peace, sustained not by grandeur alone, but by the countless small acts of ordinary, deliberate life. And as you linger on the terrace, taking in the glowing city, the hum of water, the soft laughter of children, and the distant chime of a bell, you understand that this is the quiet power of the Hittite Empire. It is steady, gentle, enduring, and wholly human, a peace maintained through rhythm, care, and the subtle magic of ordinary moments. Night has fully embraced Hattusa, and the city hums softly beneath a blanket of stars. Lanterns flicker along streets and terraces, casting gentle, shifting shadows that mingle with the silver light of the moon. The river glimmers quietly in the distance, tracing a winding path through the valley. You walk slowly, letting the cool night air brush against your skin, savoring the soft sounds of a city at rest, yet alive in subtle motion. Hittite kings often used the evening to oversee the palace, perform small administrative duties, or consult with priests and scribes. While formal courts and assemblies dominated daytime activity, the evening offered a quieter, more contemplative time, during which the rulers could maintain oversight without the distractions of public bustle.
Peace in the empire was thus reinforced through both structured oversight and the natural rhythm of daily life. You wander through a quiet courtyard where children have fallen asleep on mats under the soft gaze of moonlight. Their small chests rise and fall in unison, and their parents hover nearby, adjusting blankets or brushing hair away from sleepy faces. The air is scented faintly with herbs drying nearby, mint, thyme, and the delicate fragrance of small marigolds. You pause to admire the gentle order of domestic life, feeling the invisible thread of stability woven through countless households. Tablets from Hattusa suggest that families sometimes left a small piece of bread at the doorway overnight to invite peaceful dreams. Scholars still debate whether this was an actual practice, symbolic gesture, or ritual superstition, but the gesture evokes a culture attentive to comfort, continuity, and subtle acts of care. You imagine dozens of households performing this quiet ritual simultaneously, each small act contributing to a citywide sense of calm. As you move toward the palace, you notice the soft glow of lamps reflecting off polished stone floors. Servants move silently, carrying trays of food or lit lanterns. Scribes sit in shadowed alcoves, carefully recording the day's events and temple offerings. Even in the heart of administration, the pace is deliberate, measured, and calm. The empire's machinery of governance hums gently, like the low vibration of a stringed instrument held taut, its resonance reaching every corner of the city.
Historians still argue whether Hittite scribes were valued primarily for precision, ritual, or social control, but their meticulous work ensured continuity and stability. Each tablet, each recorded transaction, each carefully noted offering is a quiet affirmation of order and the empire's commitment to measured governance.
You wander to a small temple courtyard where incense curls slowly into the cool night air. Priests perform evening rites with deliberate hands, arranging bowls of grain, water, and oil with almost meditative care. The chants are soft and measured, blending seamlessly with the distant trickle of water from a nearby fountain. You notice a young acolyte adjusting a tiny lamp, its flame wobbling gently, reflecting the care with which even the smallest details are tended. Nearby, artisans finish their day's work, packing tools, polishing bronze, folding woven cloths, and stacking clay vessels. Children linger near their parents, quietly mimicking the movements of weaving or shaping clay, their attention focused yet unhurried. The continuity of life, skill, and craft passes from generation to generation, each small act reinforcing the calm fabric of the city.
Some scholars have found Hittite instructions for night guardians, small figures placed strategically to watch over workshops or storage rooms while people slept. Historians still debate whether this was ritual, superstition, or simple childcare strategy, but it adds a layer of gentle whimsy to the city's nocturnal rhythm. You imagine these tiny guardians standing vigil over pottery, tools, and grain jars, silent yet present.
You climb to a terrace overlooking the city. The rooftops shimmer faintly in moonlight. The river glints silver in the distance, and courtyard fires glow softly. The city hums with quiet life, the murmur of a conversation, the distant strum of a lyre, the soft jingle of a dog's collar, a child's gentle sigh in sleep. Every sound contributes to a subtle symphony of order, continuity, and peace.
Historians still argue whether Hittite urban planning intentionally created psychological calm through spatial layout, or if the serene effect was an incidental byproduct. Either way, the streets, terraces, fountains, and courtyards work together to create an atmosphere of quiet resilience, where life flows smoothly and people move in a rhythm that sustains the city's longevity.
The night deepens further, and the cool air carries scents of herbs, baked goods, and the river. You linger on the terrace, observing small movements. A scribe dips his stylus in water. A potter brushes clay dust from a finished vessel, and a temple acolyte adjusts a bowl of grain.
Even the simplest acts take on weight and significance, each reinforcing the peaceful balance of the empire. You take a slow, deep breath, letting the sounds, scents, and soft lights wrap around you. The city below seems to pulse in a measured, deliberate rhythm. The Hittite Empire, for all its history of conflict and diplomacy, rests tonight in quiet harmony. Its strength is not in walls or armies, but in the careful cultivation of daily life, craft, and ritual, a continuous thread of human care binding the present to the past. A gentle wind stirs the terrace, carrying whispers of distant rivers, faint laughter, and the soft hum of lantern flames. You close your eyes briefly, letting the moment settle, realizing that the empire endures in these small, deliberate acts as much as it does in treaties or conquests. Peace is woven from countless quiet hands, attentive minds, and the soft heartbeat of daily life. Now, as the moon rises high and lanterns flicker softly, the city exhales. You watch the slow movement of stars mirrored in pools of water, the faint glimmer of bronze on terraces, and the calm faces of children in sleep. Hattusa rests, alive yet serene, a testament to the quiet endurance of an empire nurtured by patience, craft, and care. Slow your breathing now. Let the cool night air fill your lungs gently, and feel the softness of the stones beneath your feet. The city hums quietly around you, its rhythm unhurried, steady, and warm. Every courtyard, workshop, and temple is still alive, but in a way that soothes rather than startles. You can hear the faint trickle of water from fountains, the soft jingle of a dog's collar in the distance, and the occasional sigh of a child dreaming. Imagine the artisan's hands, the scribe's careful stylus movements, the priest's deliberate rituals, all blending into a symphony of peace. Each act, small and unassuming, carries the weight of continuity, ensuring that life in Hattusa flows smoothly across generations. Even the smallest objects, clay vessels, bronze hinges, spun threads, hold within them the patience and care of the people who made them. Let the calm of this city settle around you like a soft blanket. The lanterns glow gently, casting warm light across walls and courtyards. The river reflects the moon above, steady and unhurried. The night is deep, but it is safe, familiar, and tender. You can almost hear the city breathing with you, in harmony with your own slow pulse. Let your thoughts drift like the tiny clay boat you might have seen floating in a fountain, carried gently by the current. Everything is quiet, everything is in its place, and everything is at peace. The Hittite Empire, in all its calm, deliberate beauty, reminds you that even in history, there are spaces for serenity, for rhythm, and for rest. Now, close your eyes fully. Let the gentle hum of Hattusa's life fade into your own heartbeat. Let the night carry you forward, steady and soft, toward calm dreams and restful sleep. End of script. Sweet dreams.